3, 2, 1. Anthony Darby. I'm here with Cam from Shore Natural. Thank you very much for coming out.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I love working in this industry with people that are incredibly passionate about putting out amazing medicine to patients, and that is something that you have exuded the entire time, and Shore Natural's done an amazing job. If anyone is unfamiliar, Cam is head grower. Is that the proper title? Or?
Head of Vegetation and Genetics.
Head of Vegetation and Genetics, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're going to get into the dirty of genetics. We're going to get into cultivation practices, drying process, curing, the whole 9 yards from seed to final product. Cam does a really great job in not just a passion of cannabis, but really vegetation at large, right? I mean, I see on your Facebook page you're making your own soil and making your own compost and all these different practices that are really exciting to me as someone that doesn't really understand that stuff. So hopefully today my goal would be kind of get into some of the details. So I mentioned passion. You talk about it very casually, but your passion for genetics and sourcing seeds is so robust that you convinced your newlywed wife to go on a honeymoon to Sri Lanka to go track down Thai landrace?
Yep. So yeah, it's a funny story. A lot of people asked us why we chose that location, and that was like a hard answer. So a lot of people are getting their answer now. So glad you asked that.
So if you heard that it was a top 10 vacation site on some website, that's not the truth. He was tracking down.
Yeah, I was like, oh, good beaches, but it's like we live at a great beach. You know, I don't need to travel for that.
Can you talk about that? We can talk about that trip.
Yeah,
so you go over there. Do you have some connections over there, or you go online and try to identify some folks first?
Yeah. So I met a really good connection. The Ceylonese smoking culture is a really good group of people out there. They're trying to expand the plant as a general with the government. So working super hard to just actually bring that Western medicine mentality over to like this Asian culture. They were cultivating it long before us, and he knows that. So it's pretty cool stuff. So he was able to really bring me along, show me the right roots, and I was able to get seeds. So it was a really cool expedition with him.
Do you get seeds from like some dude in a hut? Like is it?
Yeah, actually, that's the idea. Is we went to my wife. She didn't want to go into the mountains with me for that one, which I understood. So I let her stay at like the beach and hang out. She did everything, and I went to the mountains. I actually helped out on a farm for 2 days. Helped figure out some soil recipes for these guys. They have a very clay soil. These guys are growing a little bit more than just like your average fruits and vegetables. They weren't growing cannabis or anything illegal, but they just needed some help with getting that stuff together. So I helped them out, and they're like, hey, so we're going to help you get those seeds that you were looking for. And that was the whole thing itself as well. So it was a good time, though. So
I would say that I know more about genetics than the average Joe. But it's not something that I have anywhere near as much knowledge as someone like yourself or some of these folks that it's become its own industry. I mean, it's amazing to me how important the genetics are to your final product. I mean, it's obviously good in, good out, right? But how long would you say genetics hasn't been in the forefront in terms of cultivars really being able to go out and source genetics?
I'd say, it was like the late 80s when we started seeing like a lot of this Afghanistan stock coming in from soldiers and whatnot. We started getting the diversity of like ChemDog, the OGs, the sours and stuff like that. So people really started identifying with more of those genetics in the late 80s, like 90s. So now a lot of that's been like, bottlenecked down into what we know is like these polyhybrids and whatnot.
Yeah, I think genetics, like in the beginning, was almost because when you're buying your cannabis on the street, genetics all of a sudden becomes more like a sales pitch, right? It becomes like, I got the bubble gum this, or I have, whatever catchy title that guy thought he could use to get you to buy more, he was going to call it that. And as a consumer buying a Ziploc bag with bud in it, you have no way of tracing. You have no way of actually understanding the heritage of that plant. You don't know if it's Blue Dream. If he told you it's Blue Dream, you don't know what it is. Yep. But now that we're in this highly regulated market, we're actually able to go back and trace lineage and trace strains. And I guess so with a strain like Blue Dream, right? there's thousands and thousands of variations of this, right?
Yep.
So was there an original blue dream? Is it possible to trace back to like the original?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like DJ Short's the creator of that. So that was a Highland Thai and like an Afghani. So basically, he had put two genetics together, and he found this blueberry and this floral like plant. So these are your phenotype expressions, same plant, but just two little different smells and two different characteristics with the smoke. One had this crazy berry and one floral, so he named the floral Flow and the blueberry. So from there, everybody started crossing it out, and then we got the Amnesia Haze line going around. That was crossed into blueberry, and then you get your Blue Dream from there.
So everything goes back to a landrace strain eventually?
Absolutely, yep. Your landrace or heirloom genetics as well as what they call them.
And you can rattle them off, right?
Not all of them,
How many are there, would you say?
Thousands, I'd say.
There's still thousands. So even if you go back to the heirloom or the landrace, there's still thousands of those strains.
Absolutely. I mean, you hear such broad terms like Afghani or Pakistani or something like that, but there's different regions within that whole country, So, like, I just got some stuff from Afghanistan that's from a place called Qom. So that's like a completely different area. It's like a Highland Thai, which would be up in the mountains. So, these are completely different genetics dispersed within like the same country and regions. So like you can find, your short, indicas, and then you can also find these tall sativas all within, the same country.
So what do you look for? Is there a starting point then if there's thousands of landrace strains? Then when you're kind of going on your hunt, how do you start?
So I haven't bred a whole lot of landrace myself. I've just collected a lot of the seeds together that I'm going to work on a project here soon with all my favorite polyhybrids I've collected through the years. I want to kind of make some of those more sweet tones like into the land races, but it's really about goals, As far as moving forward with landrace work, it's way more extensive than polyhybrid, so it's a lot more involved. Your standard polyhybrid's a 7 to 9 week flower period for commercial.
So polyhybrid is going to be something that's been bred over and over and over again.
Yep.
It's got multiple.
So basically, it was two land races that were at one point, bred together, and then from there, someone gave it a name, and they bred it with somebody else's name, and then you start getting your Bubba Kush, and you start getting your Blue Dreams and stuff like that.
Do you find the naming stuff challenging, as some cultivars still just throw names at?
Absolutely.
We had there's one in particular. I'm not going to call them out, but the names that came out with their strains were sometimes even offensive. They were just so off the wall, and there was an instance where I had a father and daughter. The daughter was basically confined to a wheelchair, and the only sativa that I had in was called Pootie Tang.
Oh, the Pootie Tang, yeah.
And here I am talking about Pootie Tang, right? And I can't even talk intelligently
it's so
about
hard, right?
genetics, because I'm sure you probably know the genetics of Pootie Tang, but I don't. It was the first time that I had seen that name, and it wasn't the greatest of conversations.
Yeah.
When we get something like a Malawi from you guys, right?
Sure.
It's very easy to have that explanation, that conversation. Purple Malawi is by far one of my favorite variations of flower that's come out in the entire program since it's in existence. The fact that you guys have that is phenomenal. So then right now in your position, right, you're tasked with continuing to not just cultivate what you guys have, but also to come up with some new things and to look at some new things. So do you start with like an end goal, like an effect? Like, I want this to be stimulating, but not overly jittery and with a little calming as well. So maybe it's a stimulant, but it also has like some little in it and calming. Do you play with the terpene profiles? Like,
it's mostly terpene profiles, because I find once you get the diversity of a terpene profile going, you've kind of found different ailments, anyway, like things to help with all the different sources. It comes from different angles. So really I just try to diversify like the terpene profiles that we have.
We try to have the conversation in our dispensary consistently around terpene profiles and not indica and sativa. Yeah. I still find that unless you're asking if it's a short plant or a tall plant, exactly, like a lot of ways it's misleading. The more and more as these hybrids come out, like it seems like almost everything's technically a high, unless it is a true land race or that walks right across that line. We're noticing that we have sativas that have a lot of myrcene and linalool in them, but they're still called sativas. I noticed I got Bubba Kush 37 from Curio. which is a fairly relaxing strain when I utilize it. But to be honest with you, I was surprised that it had like almost 1% of limonene in it.
Yeah. Should be a little more up then,
You
right?
think that it would give you more uppity. So like even myself, even when I get down to these terpenes, I'm still amazed at how sometimes they contradict what I'm expecting, or how these different entourage effects, how them kind of playing in together, all play on each other to have different feelings and different outcomes. Some patients, it's easier to dose if someone's just trying to go to sleep or if they have pain, but if it's someone who's having, let's say, PTSD and very vivid dreams, we're going to be very careful in terms of what terpene profiles we're exposing that patient to. Yeah. And sometimes it can be challenging thinking that we're going to expose them to something that should be sedating and calming, and come to find out, oh, we didn't see that limonene in there, and
They're
actually
straight up,
they're up, right?
Yeah,
That's
right.
the worst thing you want.
Exactly.
I mean, you give if you take that PTSD victim and give them Malawi, it'd be a pretty unreal experience for
the
them.
golden tiger or something.
Yeah, the golden tiger, which is a Malawi.
It's a Malawi Zamadelica cross. Yep.
That's awesome. How many strains are you guys? Or let me ask you this: so, how many genetic profiles are you working with right now at Shore?
So we're putting out roughly about 10, but I have about 50 that we're working with. So we're just trying to perfect certain flowers, get the techniques down, and also just make sure the pheno hunts are going the way that we want them to, you know. So yeah, I roughly have like 40 more plants or so that we're not even able to run.
It's got to be exciting and frustrating at the same time, right?
Yes, yes.
There's all these great things happening, but like all of us, there's a capacity issue. And how long? So typically, getting the seeds is step one. But then, if I'm not mistaken, you're likely gonna try to seek out a mother, right, and find which one of those seeds is the best.
Sure, yep. So within like the genotype of the seed, so say like Blue Dreams, your genotype, you want to phenotype that out. You want to figure out who's different from who's going to taste a little bit better. The last thing you want is a Blue Dream that tastes like a grape, or, you know, something, this is sour, you know, so it tastes like a blueberry, you know. So you hunt through that, you find the statistics and the COAs that you want on that kind of stuff, and from there you make the call on rather the lab numbers or actually what the patients say. So we're super big on, you know, we'll put out a couple of the phenos that we think tested the best, and then we kind of wait for a response from the actual dispensaries or some of the patients that we say, like, hey, like, this is rosé going out. Like, I've got one here that's going to be a little more wine tasting. I've got one here that's actually like an OG funk to it, and people are like, oh, okay, well, I'll let you know. And then from there, we kind of have to make that decision, like, hey, because sometimes, you know, the numbers aren't exactly what you think they are.
I was going to say, is it often that, or is it sometimes where the lab tests don't match the patient feedback?
Exactly. A lot of that. Like you were just saying, you know.
We think that too. I mean, I think it's because I want to be able to constantly rely on the stats, but the absolute truth is that there are times that it doesn't always anecdotally play out the way that I think it's going to play out.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody's endocannabinoid system is so different. You know, for you to go on Leafly and get the same exact feeling as review number 1 and 2, you know, it's going to be really hard, you know.
You have Donnie Jackson, who, I don't know if he's
Donnie's the man. I love Donnie.
He concentrates all the time, but, I mean, like, I love the guy to death, but our endocannabinoid systems must just be so off.
Opposite-ended.
Yeah, if I smell a strain, I'm like, oh, it smells delicious, and he's like, oh, gag me. And then like the same thing, like he you know, just the type of strains that satisfy our needs. And what I was saying when he was on here is that sometimes I'm surprised that even though the smell test leads us in completely different directions, once we utilize a strain together, it will get the desired effect. I mean, it's not that we have the poor experiences, but the way that our olfactory senses work around cannabis between the two of us is completely, like, we're just on different spectrums.
Sure.
That was my very first experience when I went to Denver to a dispensary out there. So really relieving, you know, going into a legal dispensary. This is probably like 2013 or 14, and I was by myself. Like, it wasn't busy. It was just me and a bud tender at the time. And he was, look, I mean, at this point, almost everything's a hybrid in what we have here. The only way for you to really know, or the best way for you to know, is just to pop jars and smell. And I was just like, let's pop jars. Like,
pop them off.
I had never been, to be truthful, I mean, I don't know that I've ever been to purchase weed before that time where I had an option of more than 2 strains, right?
Sure, yeah.
It's like, I got some left over from last time, and I have the new stuff,
I got
right?
fruit, and I got kind bud. What you want?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I can't, I'm gonna sound like such a douchebag, but I can't even remember the times of smoking the same exact strain, not knowing what it was for like a month straight.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like go buy an ounce and like that was all the weed you got for a month and you don't know what it is and you like
you're still like trying to figure it out and stuff too. When to smoke it? You're like, oh, this is actually making me way tired.
Yeah, and then you're like choosing how you medicate based upon like the restrictions of this one strain.
Yeah, yeah.
When I walk in now, I'm like daytime, midday, afternoon. No, it's like I can follow the spectrum across to follow my day. To make sure that I'm medicating to match up with like what I have going on, and the fact that the genetics are getting these strains more and more dialed in to be able to. When we first started, we started out with like 7 total SKUs.
Wow. Yeah.
I had an elixir. We had, I think, 5 strains. We had Ace of Spades, Jelly Bean.
Yeah, the Jelly Bean.
Juice.
Yeah, the juice, yep. Let's see, I think.
Northern Lights. It might have been this is the 4 that come off my mind. And then we had Synergy tablets, we had Awakening tablets, and Relaxing tablets.
And that was it.
That was it.
Yeah.
And like, we got no indica, we have no sativas on the board, or even worse, we had no indicas on the board. And someone comes in and goes, "Well, I have really bad anxiety, and someone told me cannabis could help with that." And I'm looking at one sativa on the board. I'm like, "Well, I can't do that."
Yeah,
like,
you're like, get the Jack Herer, actually.
Yeah, exactly, right. So now when people come in and say, "Well, I'm looking for some energy, but I don't want to be completely general," we say, "Okay, well, look, we can." This terpene profile,
help guide them now, yeah.
Anecdotally, may not shape out this way, but at least we're here.
Yeah, and that's the best part too. It's like other than having a selection, we have people there to help guide you too. It's not just like the sour lemon kush, that sounds great. Like I hope that does the job. It's like, hey, like is that gonna do it for me? You're like,
thank God for Dr. Hoffman. I mean, our patient consultants are trained so well, and the level of conversations, even today. I overheard one of our patient consultants, and the patient was saying that they were looking to basically increase their dosage a little bit. And the conversation was around, how are you administering? Are you using a bowl or are you using a water pipe? Like, do you realize, a water pipe might give you
a very different,
at least experience, because if you find it's hard on your throat, and just there's so much into it. And we were doing the podcast with Donnie. He was talking about dabbing. He's like, if you're looking for like a standard that fits like everyone, like you're not going to find it.
Sure. Yeah.
Like he was talking about, being able to watch different people do different things and learning like that's what I don't want to do, and like maybe that's what I do want to do, and like I think that was my cannabis experience as well. Was go to different people's houses and see different,
how they reacted.
Come hit this gravity bong. Well, like that's great that like we were able to consume that much cannabis very quickly, but like I've coughed now for the last 20 minutes, and like that's not really medicating the way that I want to medicate. I've always like been a water filter guy, and like I don't know. So I just think that cannabis is the community has been very self-taught for so long that it's nice to actually be able to go to a place and have an expert or someone who's at least educated in cannabis and utilizing cannabis as a medicine. So, I mean, just so you know, when we built our dispensary, we kind of came up with this fake patient of a 65-year-old woman who gets Lyme disease, never used cannabis a day in her life. Like, if she can come in our dispensary and get educated and feel comfortable and, like, be able to purchase cannabis and get out the door without, like, basically feeling violated, I feel like then we'll basically appeal to anybody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So our patient consultants, they do a really good job of having that conversation and trying to educate on how they're going to administer it, what they're using. And I think, honestly, that's why we do a lot of concentrates more so than a lot of dispensaries, because Donnie's done such a great job of walking them through the process of this torch seems scary, but at the end of the day, like once you get used to it, like it's really not that bad, and like.
And that's because he's also more passionate about that direction of the concentrate over flower. So it's like it's gonna be easier for him to talk about it too. So it's great because I do feel like concentrate's probably like being such a newer market, probably the most slept on with like real knowledge. Like everyone knows how it's made, and
you could have a bad experience, like really
absolutely, because it's a concentrate. It's intense for some people.
All right, so. Genotype comes in, then you're sourcing the phenotype, and then tell us about, give us some, not necessarily like your tricks of the trade, but what are some of the things that you think that you do at Shore Natural that is a differentiation or is at least best practice for cultivating? So getting into the soil, get into pesticides if there are any, if there are not any. I know that I know exactly where you guys stand on that. Because you guys have been incredibly consistent since the very beginning about pesticide use. So give me a little bit of that.
Yeah, so I think what makes us stand out, I mean, there's not many soil growers really in the commercial industry in general. Soil is like everything when it comes to vegetation for any plants, So we get a lot of that flavor, a lot of that real pure plant, form from hand mixing our own soil. So we don't buy bags of soil. So everything's made with love. Beyond that too, the IPM practice, super against pesticides. So we have basically little bug sachets. We use predator mites.
That's innovative pest management process. Yeah. Everyone goes, what did you say?
Yeah, IPM. Yeah, so that's the integrated pest management. Where
good bugs eating bad bugs.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep. So beneficiary microbes and little basically mites of their own. We use the ambicymbeline and the California kiss, which are very popular for all the kind of bugs that you would get on the East Coast.
So when I went and toured Shore Natural back in the day, these little bug bags hang on. They'll actually hang them on the physical plant itself. And then when a bad mite hops on the leaf, the good mites come out, attack it, right?
Yep.
Then they go back into the bag?
Well, they usually leave the bag and just kind of run on the plant there. So they're in the environment continuously. Some of them will make their way down to the soil, and then some will stay on the leaves. But so that's why we bring in two different types of mites to kind of do different things.
Nice.
So yes, they're like little tea bags in a sense with a little hook, and you just put them right on the plant. And there's a little hole in the front of them, and the plants actually, once they kind of move around, or if we actually shake up the tags themselves, make the bug want to come out of it. They start wondering what's going on with my environment, and then they start leaving the sachets.
That's awesome. I had never seen that level of sophistication of pest management where you were actually able to use that. But now it's been standard or not standard, but I think all the growers now at this point are using some sort of innovative pest management program, right?
I would hope they're going
after Forward Grow's little issue. I know when we went toward Forward Grow, they're really into that right now. So what else do you guys? So you guys have soil. You guys have a really good integrated pest management program. What else are you guys doing? You guys are
really too. I mean, everything's hand water. So a lot of these bigger facilities have these, automatic water systems, timers.
You guys are still hand watering.
We're still hand water, and that's actually by choice practice.
And I think you're the only one that I know that's doing that. Honestly, everyone else got these huge RO2 systems that's pushing all the water through everything, and you guys are out there hand watering.
Yeah. So we just want to do it so that we can actually pay attention to each individual plant. You get these systems going where you don't know if you're getting the right amount of water at the end of the line, or maybe the front's too powerful, and you start getting plants that look better than others. So we want to make sure that we see every individual plant hands-on. So literally every plant in that building gets touched by every single worker.
That's awesome. How many plants do you guys have in your building right now? Do you know?
So right now, I'd say I in the veg room at the moment have about 870. So roughly, I'd say about probably 2,000 plants at the moment, not counting clones and seedlings.
I would consider you guys a craft-style grower. Do you guys know how are you guys one of the smaller from a production standpoint?
The smallest.
The smallest?
We are the smallest, yep.
And is that a culture that you guys are cool with? Is that something that you guys are trying to change? Or is that, hey, we're small, but the stuff that we put out is amazing, and that's how it is?
That's how it is. We're Eastern Shore to the core. I mean, everyone that owns the business and that works there is from our community. So we just take pride in just working super hard and making sure that everything just gets what Shore Natural stamped on. It's important to make sure that, I guess, our thing that stands out is we just have so many plants with so few hands, so we get to pay a lot more attention than most guys do.
I don't know if you can share this, but do you know about how much your stuff goes to processor versus dispensary?
Not a whole lot. We generally will grow like a greenhouse or two just to send to the processors because we have a really good relationship with some of those guys. Like MPX has been a great resource for us, so we try to keep them up with certain profiles. We'll ask them, like, hey, what terps do you guys want? And they'll say, hey, like, can you get us something sweet? Or we're missing, like, orange stuff. And we'll try to help them out and grow, like, a certain batch for them or something like that.
I get super excited when I see that Shore Natural sticker on a concentrate. It makes me really happy. MPX does a great job.
Wonderful job.
And they're putting out some of the best product in the market right now with diamonds and sauce. And shout out to those guys for doing a great job. All right, so we talked a little bit about this before. So now the plants are mature. They've gone through the stages, and they are ready to begin the drying curing process. You get a lot of different opinions and a lot of critics in terms of the drying and curing process.
Absolutely.
I shared a story that it's not so much now. Right now, I would argue that for the most part, all the flower in our dispensary is really aesthetically pleasing. It looks really, really good. It wasn't the case a year ago. And that was because growers were just learning their systems. They were setting up these huge, large-scale grows and realizing that their HVAC system wasn't adequate, that they had zones that were 5 degrees off from others, and that makes all the difference in the world, right? And at the same time, dispensary owners like myself are hammering these guys. I need flour. Don't let me close my doors. I have to serve patients. What are you guys doing? Bring me my goddamn flour. And then it gets here, and the patients go, what? This flour's been rushed.
This is dry hay.
What? It looks like they tried to rush dry this. Well
with
they
understanding.
did. Because they had to get you medicine. And it was either have good flour that wasn't as aesthetically pleasing, or we basically flash dried the process and rushed through the drying and curing process to get flour out there, or let the dispensaries go with nothing on their shelves.
Exactly.
And I would argue that you guys you guys came to market early. Like, I think, when did you start at Shore Natural?
So I started, that would have been 2017 or 2016 maybe. It's like towards the end of the year there, I started volunteering, making soil and whatnot.
So as soon as they were putting plants out, you were involved?
As soon as they got that license, I was actually already mixing soil. We were getting the soil ready before the plants were, cultivating or anything like that. We were just lining up the ducks.
So you guys were the second ones to market with flour, I believe, or third. I think Curio, Forward Grow, and then you guys came through with the Malawis.
Yeah.
Yep. And so you guys definitely were able to get the market, but it's also evident that there were times where you guys weren't going to be rushed, where it was just, sorry, Darby, like, this is how we do it, and it'll be there when it gets there. And even now, I mean, our shelves go times without Shore Natural on them, or we don't have a ton of Shore Natural selection compared to the other stuff. And that's just because you guys are a craft operation. It's not your deal. You're not able to push out thousands and thousands, but when it comes out, it's great. So go through your drying process, and then play devil's advocate for some of the other drying processes that are good as well.
Sure. So we just basically cut whole plant down. We have no fan leaves on that final process. They just sit and dry for, we try to do about 7 to 10 days, which is still a fairly rushed process.
Hanging upside down like tobacco?
Yep. Hang it right upside down. We have dry lines. Again, that's all done by hand on like hemp twine that we have. That's 2 ladies that handle that entire process, so it's really wonderful to watch them just knock it out.
That's awesome.
So they hang those plants up, and then after 7 to 10 days, they start drying up. We buck those down into little buds, put those in a container, and then we lid those up and basically let that sit for a good week or so, and from there, basically they get tested. Once it passed testing, then we try to let it sit for at least another half a week to a week, but usually you're getting calls right away, and people are real bad about slipping what's coming out, so, people banging on the door like, okay, when's that Hollywood coming out that we heard's already getting harvested? And you're like, well, can we please cure it a little bit longer? And at that point, that's
people
why we
being maybe people that own the business.
Yeah, well, and I think too. So like the prices were insane at first for everybody. So we dropped our prices heavy just to kind of keep up with the fact that like, hey, we can't really cure and keep up with these guys that are putting out more moist products. So we tried to compete with that price at first, just like, hey guys, like it's just the bottom line. We can't cure this, but here's the price. It's fair. It's definitely expensive overall, but we were trying to always be at the bottom line price, like the smaller, end of it all. And that was just us realizing like we could not keep up with the market, and we're still trying. So with that being said, though, we are actually working on doubling our production. We have a bunch of stuff being crafted at the moment, 2 larger rooms. So we do have a lot more product coming out soon, but that still probably won't be till about next year.
So you're hanging the plants for 7 to 10 days.
Yep.
And that's that kind of slow and low process that you were talking about.
Try to, yeah.
And then if the drying is done right, then the curing is pretty much taking care of itself then, right?
Not necessarily on that short scale of things, but on like a longer period. So like from like a personal scale with other like big growers, people do like 20-day dries, and when you go to like 20 to 25 days, then you don't actually necessarily need to cure it as long. But if you do like a 7 to 10-day dry, then you would want to cure it for at least 2 to 3 weeks ideally. But if you do that slow and low dry from the get-go, you don't really have to cure your buds much at all, you know. Just get it to a good dry point of smoking, you know, even moisture.
What are some other what are some of the guys that are doing it, even if you think it's like not the best practice? Like, are some of the guys just flash drying them, and if so, how are they just blowing them to like lots of like fans?
Beating them with fans, and then I've even seen people using like cardboard and stuff like that inside of like dry rooms to absorb the
moisture out.
And then people do like wet buds in a bag, like a brown bag, and yeah, I've heard of it all, you know.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, so no brown bags over at Shore.
How's the testing been? Like,
it's very interesting, you know. A lot of people are under the impression, because we have such crazy cannabinoid levels coming out of Maryland, that the labs are being paid and bought. You know, I think it's more of just like a difference in like moisture content, and really like our climate's completely different than other people's climates. So we're looking at way different parameters for testing and whatnot.
So you think that it's legit? You think that Curio's throwing out 35%?
I don't think anybody's throwing out 35% really. I think the record's like 32 point something by like high times. I think that realistically, like we have such
GTI did a press release that they came out with 36% in Illinois.
Sure. So that's probably like the new record, then 36.
But that's crazy, though. I mean, Curio's been at 34, at least in Maryland, right?
Oh, dude, a ton. They just put out, I think, Blissful Wizard was like 37% or something like that.
So how does that not get the record? Is it because they're scared? They know if too much? Is it? You think if prying eyes would?
I think, yeah, people would start maybe like questioning, like, how are you guys hitting this constant 30 mark? Because we hit a 35% Hollywood batch like not too long ago, and we got to test it twice. We were like, are you guys sure about this? This is like
did it come back much different?
It did. No, it was the same test results. I think the terps had changed a little bit because it had like sat in the bin a little longer, but other than that, we were like, wow, dude, like that's super potent medicine. And you know, I wouldn't doubt that a hash plant cross would go up to a 30, but again, I think it's just like the moisture content by the time the labs are getting to actually test this product. I think that, so you got to look at it from like a standpoint of percentages. So like you look at 20% THC, you got to think about what that other percentage, you know, the 80% has to be a moisture content. So if you have a lower moisture content, that's going to higher your oil content as well. So you're like, oh, wow, like say you dried your bud to like a 4% as opposed to like 10%. That's going to have a higher oil content as opposed to moisture content. So I think some of these guys are figuring out maybe some smart techniques to drying that other people aren't maybe out west. But if that's equating to better medicine or not, I can't really tell you from that scale, you know.
I'm always interested because I think some people think that, like I've heard that they're keeping their bud and stuff like that.
That'd be awesome, actually.
The problem is, though, is it's not like they get to like prepare the sample and like call the testing lab and say like, here, like test this. Like from my understanding, like testing, like you guys call a testing lab in, you have several pounds of product, normally somewhere between like 5 and 10, let's say, and then they're choosing the product that they want to test. They're coming on site.
Yep.
They're doing the selection process, and then they're testing it. So it would be really tough if someone wanted to
like tamper with that, yeah. Because it's all at the lab's will, yeah. They come in at their time when they set the date. They have a set of tongs that they sanitize. They have their scale that's, you know, customized to the exact numbers, and they take their sample. And the thing is, I think it'd be hard if you like Keef dusted it, because that's something you'd see, and like, you know, over time Keef's dry sift, so it'd probably like knock off in like whatever container. Or,
I couldn't agree more.
You know,
but it's definitely jarring to the community when these guys keep testing these huge numbers.
I agree,
because people are, and I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, quite honestly, I asked myself, Michael Bronfein spent $20 million on his facility. He's got top-notch talent. Why couldn't he grow some of the strongest weed in the country?
Sure, yeah.
Like he's like, that doesn't seem out of line to me. It's not like, you know, some kid in his basement out of a black tent's like, here's my 36%, right?
Yeah, right. He's calling the lab up.
He's running like Toyota style practices. I mean, when you go there, every room is exactly the same. The trash can's in the same spot in a taped out section. Everything is incredibly well managed business, and in a pharmaceutical grade lab, it just seems like if it's going to be done, it's going to happen under those parameters. And I guess I'm not as quick to say they're cheating or they're doing something. I'm more interested in learning about the moisture content,
Sure.
things like that make these numbers go up, but don't necessarily increase the effect. So I guess your point is like 30. It's just like anything else. I mean, if you have a strong terpene profile in a 21% indica that's super high in linalool and myrcene, it's gonna rock you more than like, quite honestly, like some of the G leaf flower that I get that's got really really low terp profiles. I don't really get I don't get a lot of the feels out of that flower. Sure. Sometimes I do, but sometimes I don't.
And they always have great smell profile, I feel like, on their product. And then I'll break it up, and it's not necessarily translated through the smoke and whatnot. Like a pineapple, when you break a pineapple bud up, it smells like a fresh pineapple. You know, like theirs smells really pineapple-y. And then kind of get into it, you're like, okay, like I do wish there was a little bit more terp profile to this. Like, and then, you know, you get some of those containers too. There's not like a total terpene at the end. So it's like kind of hard to sit there and like, all right, it's 0.01 plus 0.036 plus.
Doing the math in
yeah,
my
you're
head.
like
I know a buddy of mine he asks for the same thing all the time, and it makes total sense, but just the idea of moving to a standardized nutritional fact style packaging with terpenes and cannabinoids so that every grower, processor, and dispensary was using the exact same format, so it'd be a little easier to understand. Because I think for a lot of folks, to your point, even some of the labels that we do, they're not as great as they could possibly be if they were standardized. So I think it can be a little confusing at times. Do you get into the concentrates at all, or are you a flower purist?
Yeah, I'm not a huge concentrate guy. Like I'll have like a pen for like like my back kills me after mixing soil, so like a really nice hybrid. It's like nice in a pen, but no, I'm not a huge like dabber or anything like that. I do have a rig, and like I'll have friends over for tastings and stuff. And if they bring concentrate, we'll whip the torch out, but. It's not usually my first. I'm a flower guy.
You ever press flower?
Actually, yeah. I'm big into hash and stuff.
I was gonna say that seems like that would be up your alley.
A little more old school feel to it, I feel like.
But it's like the new school. Like when you go out, almost once again, not to keep referencing Donnie's podcast, we were talking about like some of the new trends in the dispensaries out there. You basically have like a press guy. Like you pick out your flower, and then you go to like your boy John, who's pressing like in the dispensary. Yep. You're tipping John because John's the best at pressing and getting all the oil out. Yep. And it's one of the more higher revered products right now is fresh press. Yeah. And I go back to like 10 years ago when dudes were stealing their girls' hair straighteners and like coming in the back room and like pressing between parchment paper and like look, I can squeeze all the oil out with this hair straightener and scrape it and put it on top. I'm like, oh wow,
hiding the wires around you and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You've been there.
Yep.
So how long have you been a cannabis user? For a long time?
I have, yeah. So I started when I was like maybe 14 or 15. So I'm 27 now.
Did you have a passion for cultivating cannabis early, or?
It started pretty right away, actually. It was like the year after I had seen my first plant. I was like, whoa, like that's weed. And they're like, yeah. I was like, that's actually really beautiful. Like I thought it was going to be this big, gnarly, like monster plant that's going to like intimidate you. But it's like very nurturing to actually see like a female cannabis plant, for the first time.
I feel that. But I have zero desire, and I've never had a desire to grow. Sure. Like in my life. And sometimes for some patients, I don't want to seem like I'm insensitive to the home grow issue. Sure. But for the majority of patients, I just want to be like, you're not going to grow this at your home. Yeah. That's not how this works.
It's like, much harder than people
You're not going to go where and set up. And when you get like when you have like a mite issue or you have a mold issue, the first thing you're going to do is use a pesticide.
Yeah, or you're going to go Miracle Grow it out. Right?
Yes. So I know there's someone mother effing me saying, oh, you know what you're talking about. I can grow it. Yes, maybe if you're listening to me, you can. But for 90% of the patients out there, especially patients that are sick, it's a labor-intensive process. It's not a set it and forget it tomato garden. Like this is something that requires a lot of time, energy, and it's disrespectful in a lot of ways to just assume that you could do the exact same process at home. That you guys have a crew of several people that have dedicated your work life to putting out this medicine. I appreciate, kind of the hard thing that you guys do. What are you excited about, or what are you guys working on? You said you're doubling your expansion,
Yeah,
you're doubling your production. There's probably a lot of work going on that.
Yeah, we're just trying to get more flour out, like we're, again, struggling to keep up with the market, and, we're doing fine as far as, like, a company and stuff. We're happy with where we're at because we're all, just happy people, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure more people are getting the
medicine. You don't have that huge $20 million Michael Brown fine footprint. Like, your expectations are, your model is completely different. Like I mentioned, like, when I think of a place like Curio, I think of, like, pharmaceutical grade, like, everything. And when I think of, like, you guys, I think of, like your favorite craft. Like, it's to your point. Like, there's people touching every single plant. It's not this factory. It's more of, like, a really craft style grow. Can you tell us what strains? Any new strains coming out?
Ton of new strains coming out, actually. I think the favorite one on my list is the Rosé. So it's a big one out west. It's a Purple Bomb crossed to that Sunset Sherbet that everybody's, into. It's a very wine smell. I think that's why I named it Rosé, like a red wine, or like a cooking wine almost. I haven't got to try
that tartness.
Yeah, like a little tart smell to it. Stem smells amazingly like a sweet wine. But yeah, I haven't got to try that flower yet, so we're still hunting that one out. Other than that, we have the Fat Banana coming out, which is like a really sweet tropical indica.
And what is that cross with?
So that's actually like the Banana OG crossed to something called Chiquita, which is like one of the sweeter OG profiles. That's more actually out in Europe than so here.
Can you go through? I know there's a bunch of them, but like, what are some of the more profound profiles? So like, we have gas, right?
Sure,
which is gonna be like your.
So like the East Coast. I mean, that's like one of my favorite stories to tell. It's like cannabis has affected our history so much, and especially the East Coast. And like, I'm a big.
So I see East Coast sour diesel.
Yeah, like the East Coast. So we're big on sours over here, and then the diesel still, like the gas smell and stuff like that.
But what does East Coast mean? Like, what is that? What is that gonna?
As opposed to like really like I look at it culture, like hip hop culture. I'm big into hip hop. So like you're hearing a lot of old rap songs about like the diesel, like blowing sour in the air and stuff like that. So the East Coast, we're equivalently like used to these sours and gas profiles. Out west, people were real big into like the sweet stuff, more of that the earthy Kush and stuff like that.
When I think of Snoop Dogg, I think of like Kushes, right?
Yeah,
yeah. And when I think, you're right. When I think of, I didn't even thought about that, but when I think about like the Wu-Tangs of the world, like they're rapping about the diesels and the sours. You're right.
Yeah, like even now, like I'm a big like Run the Jewels fan. Then like LP talks about the sour and like Killer Mike's from Atlanta.
You got Khalifa Kush, right?
Yeah, right. The Khalifa Kush. Yeah, it's just really funny because you can see how it influences, like profiles really influence a lot of like our history and culture, really, from like different areas of the United States alone, let alone different countries.
What do you think is kind of the future for cannabis genetics? Do you think that...
This is like a tough topic right now with a lot of breeders. There's like a company moving in called Phylos, and they're basically trying to stamp a lot of the brands and genetics, because genetics now are becoming brands, like we were talking about earlier. People associate certain names with just like, oh, that's Burner's cookie and stuff like that.
I was trying to think of that guy's name, but yeah, right. Like,
yeah, so
and now we see that he's teamed up with possibly someone here in Maryland.
Yeah. So it's like people are using these strains as like brands and whatnot. So I think that moving forward, we're going to see a lot of these like Monsantos and whatnot. They're going to come in and they're going to copyright a lot of these strains, and you'll be able to go to Walmart and buy Blue Dream seeds just like you can go get your broccoli, and it's going to be the same as Brandon's and Mary Pat's. And
then will heirloom then become like what's sought after these guys come in and patent all, like now you can sell heirloom tomato for more than you can just the run-of-the-mill hydroponic tomato. Looks like every other tomato out there, right?
I think that's the future of the market. As far as why I got into the landrace, it's just that diversity of terpenes. I mean, you can cross some land races and find stuff that's just not out there. Like I hear profiles, I'm like, how do you know what that smells like? And you won't know until you grow something like that. So that future market, everything's going to be so bottleneck. You're going to have like blueberry, you're going to have OG, you're going to have sour, and then that's going to be like it, It
doesn't seem like you're having a challenge sourcing seeds across state lines and even across international lines in some cases. Does Maryland, I knew it was always like the Immaculate Conception in the beginning, where the only way to start a plant in Maryland was to either get a illegal seed from out of state and then try to bring it in, which would be illegal because you're violating interstate commerce, or you could get basically a legal seed from out of state and then illegally transfer it.
Yeah.
or you could get an illegal seed from in-state and then legally transfer it. But either way, you were breaking the law.
Yeah.
But now that the program is in fruition, is a lot of that red tape gone, or is there any red tape, or does the commission ask you like, hey, let me see the 40 strains you guys are working on, or where they came from? Or?
They don't ask me necessarily, but we did in like our SOPs that we gave them, like our operation procedures, like, hey, like this is a list we're going to always write down when we get new seeds in, the source of where they are, the date we plant them, how many. That way we can just kind of keep up with them. I think in the future they'll probably implement more of that stuff, so we kept up with it now. But yeah, I think more of the red tape's kind of gone away with like the hemp farm bill that went into place. I think it was like 2014 or something like that. Like, it allowed us to actually transfer seeds, across lines. We don't have to worry about it. As long as it doesn't have THC, then you don't have to worry
and
about
most seeds don't, right? Like
no seeds have THC. Hopefully not. Yeah, but yeah. So if you don't have THC, then technically you're not breaking the law. I mean, I don't recommend anybody legally go just try to get seeds across borders everywhere. But as far as your legal rights, definitely know, like if you got pulled over with a seed in the United States, you should be totally fine.
At this point, I would hope so, but
yeah, right.
You see in Florida and Disney World, they're banging grandma for CBD.
Right, for
so,
CBD
jeez
oil.
Louise.
That poor lady was like 83 years old.
No.
Like, come on.
Grandma's trying to just get her CBD treatment in. All of a sudden, Mickey Mouse has got her hemmed up in cuffs.
Yeah, right. Like, come on. Yeah, that's absurd.
I'm trying to plan my Disney vacation. Looks like I'll be going to Disneyland in San Diego, not Florida, anytime soon. So we'll end on this. It's funny. So we've done a couple of these podcasts. It seemed like the only one people weren't really into was the hemp one, which we're like super into that. I'm super passionate about hemp as well, and I think a lot of people in the cannabis industry look at hemp and cannabis as kind of the same plant. It's the only difference is because they they made 0.3%. Yep. One plant less than 0.3, but as we're looking at some of these really beautiful high CBD hemp plants, and they have flowers. I mean, they look a lot more like a cannabis plant than hemp has ever looked in its life, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
The genetics world in hemp seems like it's in infancy compared to cannabis.
Sure.
Would you argue that's true?
I agree, absolutely.
And I think there's going to be a lot of like folks that have experience on the cannabis side coming in and saying, we have these cherry wine seeds, or we have these, you're starting to see the ability to pick and choose, but it's not there yet. Like when we had some seeds and we were talking to some farmers, and we were talking to one farmer who was like, unless I can get, I don't even know what strain it was, then I don't want it. And I'll be like, for you to only be willing to accept one strain of a hemp seed is not very realistic. Like, try to get a type of hemp and make sure it's one that yields CBD.
Yeah, right. And then like the phenotype expression between it, like we were talking about earlier. Like he puts down 100 seeds of Skittles, you're gonna get like 40 of them that have nothing to do with the Skittles taste too. You know what I mean? Like I guess he doesn't understand diversity.
This gentleman actually, he thought that he was going to grow 2 acres outside hemp of smokable flower.
Oh man.
I said, I think you have some challenges ahead of you.
It'll be difficult here with our humidity,
I would think so. And the market for smokable CBD flower here is emerging, if to say the least.
Yeah, like he'll be able to grow the plant out, but most likely, like we were talking about before, like prior to this, the market's gonna struggle. They're gonna have a hard time getting like really good product out. So I think these guys are gonna struggle with this humidity and stuff at first.
Some of the drying techniques we've heard for hemp are everything from hand drying to basically to modeling tobacco. With some fans and others. I've seen some of these machines that actually like rotate and heat almost like a microwave at the same time, but like
tumbler.
Just seems like it would degrade the product significantly.
Yeah, if you're gonna sell it as smokable flower, you're just butchering it up at that point.
Those guys are just looking to sell to processors.
Oh, okay.
They're just looking to they basically just want to strip it down and make crude out of it and then sell the crude out.
Sure.
Which I think it's going to be interesting. This will be the first time in Maryland that anyone's actually growing hemp.
Yeah.
It's still going to be at a very small scale. This year is only still covered under the research pilot. The Maryland Department of Ag didn't let any for-profit entities grow this year. That'll be next year. But it's going to be really interesting to see some of the success stories, some of the failures, and really understand what growing hemp in Maryland outside is like. And like, it's going to change. Like, think about how much rain we got last year. Like, I can't imagine any of that would have been that great last year.
Yeah,
It just seems like it was so wet.
It's gonna be so inconsistent. Like this year, the corn's been phenomenal. We've had like really great, like on and off rainy days this year. So it's like maybe those guys will kill it this year. Like maybe we got blessed for like the hemp or whatnot. But yeah, I agree, man. It's gonna be an interesting market to see where it goes. It's one of those things we needed though. Is like a farming community. This is gonna replace a lot of local farmers' crops.
Yeah, I gave a presentation to the Chamber of Commerce, was just going over, and like even at the low ends, the yields versus like soybean and corn are more optimistic for farmers. And I also think it's a way to get younger farmers involved too.
Sure.
I think it's more exciting for them, and they can relate to it. It looks cool when it's in the ground. Like honestly, like even me, like I walked out there, I'm like, there's 8 acres of little baby weeds growing. Like this is awesome. Like this is so cool. And I know that he had they're doing 8 acres. They had like the Wycomico drug task force out. Like, hey, if you're flying any drones or helicopters, like
it is weed, kinda like
you can test it.
Yep.
And that's crazy too. Is I mean, some of these guys are going to test hot.
Yeah.
Some of these guys are going to add too much fertilizer. They're going to bump these plants too fast. They're going to stress, and they're going to start excluding some THC, and they're going to have to chop them all down and burn them.
Yeah. I sat in on one of these meetings with everybody, and people were freaking out. They're like, "Am I going to go to jail if I test hot?" And they're still figuring that program out, because technically it's weed at that point,
I mean, I try to explain our challenges in our CBD business and why we're regulated so heavily, and it's because we utilize batch testing. We use Atlantic Testing Labs, but a lot of folks don't do testing. And if that tincture is 0.5% THC instead of 0.3, then you're not selling CBD tincture, you're selling weed tincture.
Yeah, exactly.
And chances are, if you got 150 bottles, 200 bottles, you got a lot of it, right?
Yeah, right. You're sitting on weight, technically.
The stakes are high, and we still see people getting. We saw in Ohio a tractor trailer full of hemp pulled over.
Okay.
Those 2 guys were getting harassed, and there's still a lot of ambiguity around how the country treats hemp and how each state treats hemp, let alone cannabis and CBD. I'm excited for the future of cannabinoid-based wellness, and I'm a huge proponent of looking at the plants as a single source. I don't know why THC should be treated different than CBG or CBN or CBD or any of the other cannabinoids that can have medicinal properties. So.
I think people with this hemp program too might see kind of the entourage effect. Like, hey, like CBD and a little bit of THC is actually great. Like we were talking about earlier with this potency thing. Like, I love telling the story. The best flower I ever smoked was at Emerald Cup last year. It was Mean Gene's Cherry Limeade. It's like 13% THC, and like they didn't even have the terps listed out there. And dude, I was rocked for hours. As opposed to coming here, you smoke something like 32%. You're like, oh my gosh, like this is way different. It's way different.
So that 13, do you think it was crazy in terps?
I think it's definitely very terpy. Like, but at the same time, I think there's underlying cannabinoids that we just don't really understand quite yet, too. And I think that going forward with hemp being a thing, like we'll be testing for way more of a parameter of things that we didn't know. Because we're trying to find out about both these plants.
Even our terpene profiles now. Like the other day, I read off like 4 terpenes I've never heard of before in my entire life.
Yeah, right.
Like they're just continually, and I know a lot.
Yeah. And how'd you pronounce those?
Yeah, exactly. Bishopville, I think, was one of them.
Okay.
Have you heard of that one?
I don't think so.
Am I saying that right? Bishopville.
Oh yeah, visible.
Visible.
Okay, yeah.
So,
You're like ossamine. I was like, am I saying that right? Is it ocamine?
And now I look for ossamine. Ossamine is one of the terpenes that I like.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. Anything else that you want to make sure that people know about genetics, growing, or drying, or curing, or Shore Natural while we have you?
Like I just want to say, like, to at least all the other growers, like a lot of people are putting out really great product. Like I'm glad that we have like a really good community of people. So like shout out to all the guys in Maryland. They're just killing it, doing a good job. Other than that too, like the Ceylonese smoking culture, the guys that helped me source stuff in Sri Lanka, they're wonderful people. So thank you to those guys. And Shore Natural has been a wonderful outlet for everything I do. So big shout out to that crew. There's 6 of us that do all of that work. So couldn't have done it without all those guys. Everything we do, the selections and stuff like that. And
just thank you again. I mean, we there's few people that love the Eastern Shore of Maryland more than myself. I mean, it's in my. I'm definitely a come here. I'm not from here, but this is in my DNA. And when I was able to partner and collaborate with you guys, and we have employees that have relatives that work for you guys. It's very much a local, small town feel, and I was just so happy that you guys are putting out such amazing products, and we love singing your praises. And I'm really excited for more product. I mean, obviously, that's what we're always hankering for more and more and more. But we appreciate it, and thank you so much for truly being there for the patient. Shout out to Shore Natural again. They've participated in veteran events for us and helping out with the Canna Care Fund. They've been very, very patient centric, and we've been able to see eye to eye in terms of our goals and how we look at patients. And this is being a medicine, so I'm really happy and thank you for coming on, and Cam, and everything that you do, and really excited to see what's next.
Dude, thank you so much for the kind words, man. I really appreciate that. Thanks again for having me.
Awesome. Take care.